another GRIP-Birkman Coaches Cafe as we're having a really exciting time today talking to Nate Scholz about a new tool that he's sharing with us to help us as coaches help the people we are coaching to make the connections between what their symbols mean and how they can use this even in their everyday lives. So, Nate, we haven't seen you on a Coaches Cafe in a little while. So, share with the group a little bit about who you are, where you're coming from, uh, not just physically, but what you're up to these days.
Sure. Yeah. I live here in a little town called Stanwood, Washington. It's about an hour north of Seattle and maybe 45 minutes to an hour south of the Canadian border. So kind of out in the middle of nowhere. Um, Live here with my wife and 5 kids, and we've got our oldest is in university. She's been back for the holidays, and we're preparing to launch our first son to college in the fall. So we got some flight taking place here, which is really interesting. Um, my history for work has been in the past has been mostly in missions with the mission agency called Frontiers. Works they send to Muslims around the world. And I had 3 phases of operations with Frontiers. The first one was about 7 years in South Lebanon as a field worker on a church planting team there. The next 8 years was spent doing mobilization. I was in the first class of area directors when that role was created. So I oversaw a team of about 10 mobilizers in the Northwest 5 states here. And then I took on a really strange role. I managed to finagle my way into a 2-person department called Strategic Partnerships. And so I was a strategic partnerships consultant with Frontiers. And basically that meant that I was on the leadership team of Vision 5-9 and some other global network leadership teams. And guess what? If you're on a global network leadership team, you're probably going to come in contact with John Blake when he's working with Vision Synergy. So that's the connection, the tie-in over time. Last February, I switched over from Frontiers to Frontier Ventures, which is formerly known as the U.S. Center for World Missions. And now I'm part of the Ralph Winter Launch Lab, which is an innovation lab with has about 10 of us in it, and we're kind of doing whatever we can to get new ideas flowing in missions that will change the missions landscape for the better, hopefully. And yeah, love to talk about that sometime, but it's not the topic that we're here for, I guess. So yeah.
So Nate, talking about the making connections and this tool that you've developed, presenting to us today to help people make the connections. Talk just about even the context of the word connections and how you're using it there with people using their GRIP-Birkman.
Well, okay, yeah. First, it might be a really good thing here, Larry, to say that, and I'm approaching this as it's not something I'm doing yet. Actually, it's an idea that is emerging.
Okay.
It's an emergent idea. It's just been conceived of actually, and I haven't tested it. So this is what I figure is this is a great group of people to get it in front of and find out if it's even a good idea, right? So.
Right. Then
Um,
talk to us about the need that you're seeing for it, Nate. What need is this addressing?
Yeah, well, for me, it's I guess it's the way that I think, um, that it helps me to have a linear progression where I can see that the connections there are connections, so it's a flow of why would I, why would I start with the square and the circle instead of doing the normal route that GRIP-Birkman does, right? We've got it in order from asterisk to diamond to circle square. And I'm sure that there's a really good reason for that particular order. They chose it for a reason. I'm not sure what it is. Um, so one of my questions is it okay to handle these the coverage of our shapes out of order from what they present them in. And the reason that I would do that is because um, for myself, as I've just looked at the way the shapes connect for me is, and this is even in the introduction, the training that I got. I think, John, you said if you're talking about asterisks and diamonds, those you can handle those if you imagine those as being 12-point font in importance, and your circle and square are 48-point font. Well, then why are we starting with the stuff that's less important?
Right.
So if we start with, okay, if I the def or the stress behavior, you know, introducing that as something you can notice. If I notice that I'm doing this stress behavior emerges in me, then it tells me if I'm paying attention, it's going to tell me that I have a need that's not being met. And if I can meet that need, then I can move to my default behavior, or sorry, what did we decide that was the right way to talk about it?
Berkman uses the word usual, a
Usual
usual or
behaviors. Yeah,
effective
yeah. I
style
need to.
behavior for the
I
diamond.
still
Yeah.
need a lot of training, so I'm hoping you guys can help me. So if I could get to my normal behavior, then that gives me a chance to actually fulfill or actually if I get to what motivates me, then it can get me to my normal behavior, and then even beyond that, I can achieve dotted diamond. I'm probably not going to be to my fullest in spiritual fulfillment if I'm still in stress behavior, right? So
Right.
there's this linear progression. We want to get to this space, and it's over on the far right, but we have to start with the far left, overcoming those, noticing the stress behavior as a trigger to cause action. Okay, oh, I'm noticing this. What do I have to do to have my need met so I can move forward? So that's kind of reorganizing that helped me to um, in our circle square page where it identifies keywords and key thoughts. And then people I sometimes identify with those things. They go, oh yeah, I do that all the time. Okay, well, where would that lead if how would you overcome that need? Or how would you meet that need? Then what would that lead you to? What does that normally, if you're not feeling that way, what does it actually lead you to? So it just kind of gives people a visualized path that might be pretty helpful for them to actually use it to apply for their
Yeah.
lives, I think.
Nate, why don't you share your tool with us and let us look at that, and that'll help us to have something to work off of.
Yeah, so the idea it's just kind of put it into formulaic form so that it can aid people in building their own out. Um, so basically, if I notice that I'm squaring, it reminds me that my circle isn't being met, which circle is a need. If I can see to my need, it results in not being distracted from what motivates me. And my motivation naturally leads me to my normal behavior. Um, when I also listen to the Holy Spirit and follow Jesus, I will dot a diamond more frequently. So I put my particular map here. That's my actual real map, and put an example for myself here. So my example is if I notice that I'm withdrawing from participating, it reminds me that my need to feel respected or appreciated is not being met. If I can fortify my internal confidence or clarify what I'm doing is meaningful to others, it results in my not being distracted from my motivation to design and build elegant systems. My interest in improving the efficiency of systems naturally leads me to find and talk to people who have authority to make changes and architects who know how to build. When I also listen to the Holy Spirit and follow Jesus, I effectively convene gatherings that center around important ideas that lead to change.
This is your Berkman
Yeah,
map right here. So
it is.
using your example here of coming from your diamond in the green, but starting with your stress and needs, which is not a bad place to start, right? With start with what the needs are. If I have this in my life, but you go to the stress first. If I don't have that in my life, then moving over to the interests and the diamond, here's what my behavior will be like if I do have those needs met. And then finally, looking at the dotted diamond, hey, I love the use of a real diamond there for that one. Let's give Nate some input on it.
Nate, I always appreciate your thinking, as you know. And I really like that this is a step that you can follow up in several months or even a year later with people to re-engage them in the whole Birkman. And just the thought that people need to put in to come up with where you have the examples, if it looks like this kind of thing. I think that's a really helpful way for people to engage with their Birkman more deeply.
Thanks.
I like it.
Starting with the stress behavior, to say, why is this happening? And that's one of the great things about the Birkman, that it gives us some why, where we can look and say, why am I behaving in this way? Why am I doing this negative kind of thing, withdrawing from the group in this case, or however, wherever on the map your stress behavior might be? And then looking to say, okay, so what is the unmet need, the unmet expectation, and what do I need to do to get that need met, to get into the kind of environment where I can then get into my productive, positive, usual style of behavior, right?
Nate, I don't know that I've ever taken time to think of the connection directly between the circle, the need, and the asterisk. I think the way I've always thought about that's always been mediated through the diamond there. It's always kind of been, and you're connecting those in a new way. That's interesting to me. I like thinking about that one. I have to give that some more thought, but that's a new approach that I haven't seen before, and I like the connection there that even our passions, desires, our motivation can be distracted when we're not in a place where our needs are being met. So I appreciate that new connection for me there.
What I'm finding, Nate, is that I didn't connect it earlier, but all this last year, I've been looking at exactly how you've laid this out in my job. And I really thank you for putting it down in words. That will even help me go farther, because I've never, just like what was shared, I never connected my circle with my interests. So thank you for giving me a new perspective to look at, like, what has happened over the year and why I was seeing so many stress things. And what a wonderful tool to take to people, to our clients, to go, okay, look, are you stressing? Well, let's look at this. And then also, I like how you said we could share it with the team too. Look, if you see me doing this, can you come alongside of me and help me to get out of the stress and back into my usual or normal behavior? So, Nate, this is wonderful. Thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome. And because our needs are it keeps coming up. These are the invisible things. My needs and motivation are invisible. So I'm thinking, like, if each person, after their individual interviews and interpretations, came up with their most dramatic, their most obvious formula for them, and then they could share those in a team build with everybody, so that everybody else knew what a triggering stress behavior looked like for each other, and what the needs that were associated with those, kind of in a formula. You could even have the formulas posted on the wall or something in if it depends on the work environment, but you could even have reminders for people. And I just think that it would overcome a lot of the things that cause conflict in a team setting.
And I think it's a great tool to help people make a connection because in our mission organization, One Mission Society, we use the Birkman as part of the entry into the organization, and we help people to become more self-aware because they're going to be serving. Many of them are going to be serving overseas, and and we certainly want to get to the circle and the square before they go, just to have that talk about what are some things that are stressing you, and
Mhm.
knowing that when they go to the field, they're going to experience even more stressors over there. But I've never thought about introducing it in quite this way, but it makes a lot of sense to me. Maybe, and this probably has something to do with my need. I tend to unpack it slowly,
Mhm.
often start with interest because I feel like I'm meeting with people for the very first time. They don't know me, I don't know them. And so it kind of creates some safety before I start exploring, going a little deeper. And it seems that works really well. But then sometimes I always wonder, are they really making the connection between the needs and the stress
Mhm.
that I see? And sometimes I'm just getting a lot more direct with them and explain some things. But this is really eye-opening, I think. It's great
So
tool. Thank you.
yeah, so Gail, one of the things I noticed is when maybe this is maybe I'm observing this correctly, maybe not, but when I start with the asterisk and the diamond in the order that Berkman gives them to us, if people have been if people are well balanced and they don't they actually live in their asterisk and diamond most of the time, then that can be helpful for them to start there. But if people, like, if they're currently stressed, or if they they don't often feel like they get to operate in their diamond and their asterisk, then sometimes it's harder to convince them that this is all really accurate for them, because they go, I don't know, well, maybe I guess something like this. But usually
Yeah.
by the time you get to the circle and square, they're going, oh no, yeah, that's really true. So it seems like, we all, it's like the Apostle Paul, we all know our our faults. And it seems like maybe partly it shows the connection between all of these instead of them just being independent and hard to make a connection. But also you start from the one that they're probably they're gonna buy into or lean into what you're saying more, because you're starting with an area that they're more familiar with in themselves, and it might build the confidence in how we're presenting it as well if we start with those. Does anybody know if there is a reason for the order that Berkman decided to introduce them in?
For sure. I mean, it's sort of that start with why, right? Like, I mean, go all the way back to what's that underlying motivation? What's that driver? That's why you would start with the asterisk to really help somebody understand what that movement in is. And then the usual style being, this is the norm. This is what you're typically going to see from this individual. I hear what you're saying, Nate. I love this tool. I love this tool as a refresher, as a, hey, how solid do you really grasp how interconnected these pieces are? I think this is brilliant for that. I think the way that you've laid it out forces people to think about it in new ways. I would struggle personally leading someone through the first time coaching this way, to
Right.
introducing it this way, because it
Yeah.
starts with a negative. It starts with from that. Now, if I were, I'll throw this out, and I'm not. And so if I were in a counseling situation where a person was in crisis, and that was initially why I was connecting with the person, then I might consider this a little bit differently. Um, for a coaching relationship and for an introduction into the tool, I probably wouldn't lead in this way. But this is the sort of thing where if I started seeing them being overwhelmed a couple months in, or hey, they're in a transition, hey, let's take a look back at this and understand it in a little bit different way about how those pieces are fitting together. I think this is really powerful in that way, to use in that situation for sure.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I was thinking the same thing, John, that in fact, using the title, making the connections, after we have had that initial conversation with someone, after they've gotten to look at their report, they've gotten to have the, we're sure that they're comfortable with the report and a general understanding of the symbols and what they mean, then bringing this out to say, hey, let's try to connect it together now. That's where I would see this tool being most helpful. And also your thoughts there too, Nate, about this being something that we can, a tool that they can use to share with other people, to share in conversations, to use in the team build, and to keep those things fresh for them. Here's a one-page snapshot for you to remind you of your symbols and what they mean. And at any given time where your gifts might be coming into play also. One thing I would really like to do would be to have that dotted diamond movable, to say, hey, when I'm moving into some kind of a behavior that I can't explain any other way except my gifts, sometimes it might move me way over to the red, but sometimes it might move me much farther up to the extroverted behavior, even with those gifts that you mentioned on the example here. But using this as a tool later in the conversation, and not necessarily starting out the conversation with this tool. You mentioned, Nate, about why we might start out with interests, why we start out with usual behavior. A major reason for that is because the interests are something that people can talk about. Hey, here are some things that motivate me. Here are things I like to do. Here are things that when I have had a job that allowed me to do some of these things, it was when I was really at my best. And then the diamond, because that's observable behavior. So what's the kind of behavior we can observe you involved in when you're at your best? And that's a great place to start with the conversation. And then we can move to, well, so what are the needs that you have that will let you be in this behavior, and why sometimes are you not in that usual most effective behavior because these needs or expectations are not being met. So that being why when we're doing a general thing, we start with those, but not necessarily starting every conversation exactly the same way.
And this, I actually have a series of questions. The first is maybe a language thing. For you to unpack the second block, if I can see to my circle, it results in not being distracted from my asterisk. When it first came onto the screen and I was looking through it, my mind immediately asked the question, what are you meaning by if I can see to my circle? Because that was not immediately clear to me what you were trying to say in that. And if you could unpack that a little bit.
Sure. It's I'm kind of interpreting the circle as standing for the word needs. So if I can see to my needs, if I can, or maybe a better way to write that would be if I can meet my need that's associated with that behavior or something.
Okay.
Yeah, it might need a little bit more clarification.
So maybe attend would be a better word there.
Okay.
Because I was trying to see if I could see, and I was literally trying to get a visual. Okay, so sitting in front of me with my reports, if I could see to my, what does that mean? But as you talked, it began to make more sense. Second question is the tool, as GRIP-Birkman entirely does, relies on a certain level of self-awareness. So, for example, what if I'm not the one noticing that I'm withdrawing, but other people on the team begin to notice and verbalize something about that?
I think what you're getting at there, though, Nate, whether I am the one who first notices it or not, when I become aware of my stress behavior is what you're getting at. So when I become aware of this, however I've become aware of it, then I need to be reminded that there is some need that's not being met, and I need to go pursue that to say, what is the need that's not being met?
I think it brings up an interesting point, though, Dick, in this. What role does the team play in our awareness of how we're coming across? And that's really challenging, because a lot of what goes on inside of me wants to say, hey, Jeff, you've been MIA, or Nate, I've seen you withdraw and now you're not raising your voice, in these conversations where it needs to be heard. That's my default. That's what I want to do, but that may not actually be helpful in the moment. And so that gets back into, even if I'm making an observation, how do I use that observation to help someone else in their discovery journey, right? Of facilitating that process. And my thought might be, if we together were to talk about this and say, hey, I think, but you said it correctly, either self-awareness or a learner's posture are sort of a prerequisite for assessments to be helpful. If I don't have a learner's posture, or I don't have self-awareness, it's not, it's going to become more ammunition for other people around me, but it's not going to truly be as helpful as that team integration piece. So it's an interesting point to bring out. And I love the thought of, then how do we use something like this that is designed, or potentially for an one-on-one interaction, or for me to do in my own alone time, how do we then make it into a team enhancement, if you will, a team, deepening experience? I don't think you can get away from the idea that there's some level of assumed self-awareness that has to at least be experienced through the process, that they have to be willing to at least read their report and say, there is a stress behavior on here. May not be the one that, the other 9 of us would pick for you, but you're at least identifying that there's something there that is real for you.
Right. And so, John, I'm thinking too, and this came up earlier in the conversation, another use case for this tool, right? Because the main use case is I'm using it for myself. But what if another use case for it is as a supervisor, as a team leader? So, for example, Gail is part of my team. But if I begin to notice in Gail, let's use withdrawal. If I begin to notice that Gail is not, showing up as the way that she normally does, and if I have her GRIP-Birkman reports, I can take a look at that and see, okay, here's a stress behavior that, yes, but it also points me toward a particular need of Gail's that perhaps is not getting met. That lays the foundation for potential coaching conversation that I can have with Gail.
It does. You're assuming 2 things there that I would just want to call out. One, you're assuming a really high level of trust between the 2 of you for you to be able to call it out for her, right? Like that's a pretty high level of trust if I'm going to call that out. And 2, you're assuming that you are understanding her underlying need, given that you're observing a certain stress behavior. That direct relationship may or may not actually work. You can make the observation of the stress behavior, but for you then to actually, even though you have the report, for you to truly understand what the need is that isn't being met is probably further of a stretch than I would want to go. I would much rather facilitate that through conversations. I'm observing this.
Right.
Talk to me about it.
That's why I said it was a coaching conversation, not a supervisory conversation.
Yep. Beautiful.
I'm perceiving this. Your Birkman suggests this. Am I on target, or help me to understand what's going on here? And then let her address some of that. The other question that I have is the third block. My interest naturally leads to me using my usual behavior. And there's a question in the back of my mind. Where does contextual constraints play into this? With that third question. In other words, that if my function on a certain team is, but there may be constraints within my context that are outside of me. And so I recognize the stress behavior. But the question for me is it a valid statement that my interest naturally leads me to using my usual behavior? Is that always a valid statement given the context in which each of us serves, which is unique to us?
One thing I would say to that, Dick, especially for someone who might have their interests in a different quadrant from their usual style of behavior, is we need to remember that the interests are motivational. And many times we can look and see that where a person is not able to be involved in activities that are in line with their interests, it does lead to stress behavior because there's a need there. Those high interests that we talk about actually becoming needs, and those low interests actually being aversions, where we could equally say the low interests could lead to stress behavior, perhaps because of my aversions that can convert to stress behavior. So I think, sometimes we can see the correlations, but they just won't necessarily be as linear or straight line, as easily connected as you might think. It is a matter of when I am able to be involved in especially my highest interests, I am more likely to be in my usual effective style of behavior. I'll be much more productive when that's happening. So that's the only thing I'd be able to say. And I'm not sure I would use the word naturally leads to, but I see what you're getting at with that, Nate, that there is a connection between the interests and my usual behavior.
The diamond, I typically think of that as the adverb of how I'm, it's the adverb. It's how I do something rather than the verb itself. So, I may lead, but because I have a blue diamond, I'm going to lead personally, or I'm going to lead reflectively. I'm going to lead, outside of the creatively. It's not the action itself, it's the adverb to that. So even if my context has me doing something that, maybe I'm having to do more of the one-on-one counseling sort of thing, which is not my default. I'm still going to do that through that blue diamond. If I'm functioning in my best, that's because it's the adverb, right? If I were over in the yellow, I'm going to do that very systematically, very organizationally sound, type of thing. So I look at it as the adverb, not the verb.
Yeah, that's a good word, John, because if we start with the interest and we say the interest is the what, this is what I like to do. Then you go to your diamond, this is how I like to do it, how I get it done the best, my most productive. And then we go to the why. The why can be because I'm in the kind of environment that allows me to do that. My needs are being met. So I like the way you've put that, John, with that being the adverb.
Yeah.
A couple of words have occurred to me as I've been listening to the conversation and thinking about the use of this tool. And Larry, your question earlier in terms of where people normally start the conversations. And I think where I'm landing on this is that for me, starting with the interests, and given how Birkman sets it up, starting somebody at the interest, especially in our context, which Gail described, we're most often at this point in our organization, we are most often working with people new coming into the organization. They're new to us and they're new to GRIP-Birkman. So for us, it probably makes more sense to start at the area of the interests as a didactic or an instructional or a training piece, where this tool, I think, is extremely valuable as a diagnostic tool.
Yeah, I can see that too.
I would definitely agree with what Dick just said. I mentor pastors, and often when they're sitting across my desk or across the table in a restaurant, they're there because they're a mess. Something's broken. I can see this tool being very valuable in that conversation, just as it is. And taking out the shapes and putting in blanks, I can even see using this with somebody who's totally unaware of the Birkman. Just guiding the conversation. So thank you, Nathan.
I just wanted to say that I really like this tool. I think that I probably, like some of the others said, wouldn't want to start with it because I think that it's really important to emphasize to people that who we are in Christ, how he created us to be, how he designed us, and let people come from that place of affirmation first. Because I think this tool would be brilliant in that a lot of times we don't feel that way, or sometimes we don't feel that way. We don't see ourselves in that light. We, and when we're not operating in our best selves, in our most effective self, when we're stressing, it's embarrassing, it's troublesome, it's ineffective, it's diversive, it's all those different things. And to have something that says, why are you doing that? And helps to lead you back to that good place, the place that God designed you as. I like the way he's laid it out. It gives you food for thought. And anyways, I just value all the conversation, and thanks for the tool because I think it will be helpful.
Anyone have any thoughts about how you would lead into this then from the conversation? Some more, you've mentioned some already. How would you begin the conversation and then perhaps lead into using the tool? When we're in a group setting, we often start with interest, but where do you start the one-on-one conversation?
With interest, usually.
Yeah, you start with the interest, Gail?
Yeah, I start with interest because I don't know the person and they don't know me. And so
how do you start that conversation, Gail? What's the first question you ask them?
We look at the first 10 pages of the person's report and I ask them to tell me about their interest. And I say, feel free to use other words to describe your interests if these words aren't adequate to describe. And how do those play out in your life? And that usually yields a lot of insight, so much comes out. It's more than just interest. I hear things that help me realize, here I'm hearing some needs here. I'm hearing some usual behavior here. Not often I don't hear anything about stress, but I definitely hear needs and usual behavior as people talk about their interests. Where I see this being really helpful is once I've gotten to know a person and I've had 2 or 3 or 4 meetings with them prior to the training that they do through our mission organization, where we build enough trust, enough safety that we can start talking about stress on a more in-depth level and helping the person to think about some examples of stress that they've experienced and how they see the need connected. What need is that reminding them of? Help them to make that connection between their stress and their need. People don't often get that connection at all. A few do, but many times it's a hard place to get to.
So in your case, you're saying you would not bring a tool like this in until after you've had 2 or 3 conversations with them.
Yeah. But I like some of the other, the third block, my interest naturally leads me to whatever the usual behavior is, and where you can use that to talk then about a person's when they're at their best.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's really good, and I think even the second block could be used to help people attend to their needs. What needs do they need to attend to? I'm not sure if I understand completely the connection between the needs and the interests that he's gotten in that second block. And Nate, maybe you can explain that or say a little bit more about that.
Yeah, well, I guess I was exploring that they were all connected. for myself and just so I have a practice. I do personal retreats, and I have an ongoing living document where I'm doing listening prayer, discovering things about myself, and then writing them into my living document. And so part of making, condensing, getting the taking the gold from GRIP-Birkman and condensing it into a very tightly worded but very meaningful truth is really helpful for me to be able to include in that kind of a document. And so I guess I wanted to explore and maybe they're not entirely connected. I could see how you could put things in there that aren't necessarily related to each other, and it wouldn't be as helpful. But if there are connections in the different observations that we make on the different pages of the different shapes, and we can see a connection, I wouldn't want to make things up, like any diamond trait and any circle trait thrown into this wouldn't work, right? You'd have to kind of make that observation. Oh, this is actually connected to this. I don't do this when I can't overcome this need. And if I overcome this need, it will lead to this, because I've seen that in my life. So I guess that would be something to think about, is to not allow people to make things up just because it's written on their page, but to really, because there's a lot of gold in my report. I started to explore whether or not I could make a bunch of these. Like, what if, could this lead to like a whole big massive observation of new things? So I started to build out this,
Wow.
all of the different potential things that the needs, I went through my report and started pulling all of them out that were true. And I got to this point and I was like, yeah, I don't know. Maybe, and maybe I just got to a stopping point, and I'm in my next retreat, I'm anticipating I'm going to go through this and think more about it. So I'm still working through, are these things connected? Can I make some? It might be that out of the 6 here, only really 2 or 3 are real, that actually have connections all the way out. So it's just something that I'm still thinking about too, I guess.
But you're thoroughly exploring the why there. Why am I behaving this way? And you're searching then to say, what is the underlying unmet need, right?
Right. And that's just the way I think. Wow, the stress behavior is actually a gift for me to give me if I'm paying attention and I'm watching for it, because I think this my thing. The thing I think is really true of people is that when you're in stress behavior, you're not caring about analyzing what what your need, it's like, I'm just pissed, or I'm grumpy, and it's hard to get out of that cycle. But when somebody gives you this gift, like, well, that you can actually use that to your benefit. If you notice that, if you cause that to give yourself a trigger to overcoming, then it's almost like the verses about fleeing from the devil, or that it's like you get something that triggers. Okay, that's an indicate. Oh, that's from the devil. Okay, I'm going to turn my back on it then. So it's a means to overcome, because it's I even in thinking about this, I go, okay, I know right now that there's a guy that I work with in my current team that I don't think respects me very much, and doesn't show appreciation, and I am withdrawing from him. I absolutely am doing that right now actively. and I have to, I could just do that and let the team start to, deteriorate and just not work with him and be just live in that kind of toxic environment. Or, okay, now I need to come to grips with that. Am I going to somehow meet that need without confronting it with him, or just not expect that from him? Or should I go and tell him that I'm noticing this and what's going on with that? Am I believing the best about him? Am I actually making that up in my head? Maybe it's not true, and I just need to give him the opportunity to overcome my perception of that. So it's giving, it indicates to me the next step for me is I have to choose. Do I just want to live here, or am I going to actually follow through on the things that I can to have my need met? So it's all, this is the productive part of all of this GRIP-Birkman stuff to me. That's the thing that has the highest value for me is learning how to, because I confess that I think the idea of actually confronting someone and saying, hey, I don't think you're respecting me and that's a need that I have. How are we going to overcome this together? That never, ever would have occurred to me before. Who would ever think of doing something like that? You're just going to be mad and feel justified in your stress behavior.
Yeah, and we do hear that a lot. Somebody trying to justify their stress behavior.
Yeah.
From the very beginning in the garden, the man and the woman both tried to put the blame off on somebody else, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so where this is helping people to own, all right, one of the biggest things we say in GRIP-Birkman coaching is, who's responsible for getting my needs met? And it's me, because I'm the only person who really, really knows what it is that I'm expecting from other people, what it is that I need from them to be able to be at my most effective behavior. And so what do I do to get those needs met? Well, I share my burden with others is one of the ways we do that you're talking about there, Nate. Mm-hmm. Sharing the burden with others and allowing them to help carry that burden when we start doing some one anothering. And then if we get to the level of trust that John was talking about earlier, if we get to that level of trust when I can actually share with them, hey, I need for you to know this. Here's what I need. Here's what will help me to be most effective. If we can get to that level of sharing and trusting, then we can help to bear one another's burdens even better, because I can look and say, hey, when I see Nate behaving in this way that's negative, I know one of his needs is this. Maybe I can just go and help meet that need. So, wow, what a way this can be to help us build unity in the body of Christ.
We talk a lot about the needs and the motivation being hidden.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it's a revelation for a lot of people who are getting their interpretation of their assessment that I think sometimes their needs and their motivations are even hidden from themselves.
Yeah, if you look at that Joe Harry window thing of, the blind side, right?
Right.
And there is where carrying this to the team then, to the team level, we don't get the full benefit of GRIP-Birkman if we don't take it to the team level. So, and wow, I hate to bring this up, because I think we need to come back and revisit a lot of this stuff, some more folks, because our hour is up today, and I want to be respectful of your time, especially starting out with the new year. But we will be back again next month. I trust that all of you will be able to join us. I hope you're having a great beginning to your new year, and that it will be a productive year for you, that you'll be able to stay in your 65% or more in your effective behavior, applying your gifts as coaches, as you're helping other people to build unity in the body of Christ, so more people will know Jesus. We hope to see you next month. God bless you. Bye-bye now. Thanks, Nate.
Absolutely.